is the accountability for the killers ushering in the climate apocalypse? And I started out by asking really a simple question. If somebody set your house on fire, you know, an arsonist set your house on fire, and it killed one of your kids, or it killed your dog, and then after, you know, after the disaster, the city comes to you and says, you know, for the next 50 years, or for the rest of your life, you're gonna have to donate $100 a month to that arsonist through your taxes. How would you feel? Well, this is exactly what's going on right now. People who've lost their homes, lost their families, lost family members, lost their livelihoods to wildfires, floods, extreme heat and cold, mile-wide tornadoes, bombs, cyclones, heat domes, and hurricanes, and drought caused by or exacerbated by our climate emergency, nonetheless have to pay taxes, you know, with every paycheck to subsidize the fossil fuel barons who are causing this problem. For over 50 years, this industry's executives have known exactly what the outcome is going to be of burning fossil fuels, and yet they have funded scientists to lie to us. They have bought an entire political party and a few politicians in the Democratic Party as well, but mostly the entire Republican Party. You want proof of that? Joe Biden in his negotiations with Kevin McCarthy is like, oh, we got to cut the deficit. And Biden is like, cool, let's cut $31 billion out of the deficit by ending 5% of the subsidies that we give to the fossil fuel industry every year. And Kevin McCarthy is like, oh, no, wait, no. I'm not going to piss off the fossil fuel billionaires. That's not going to happen. James Hansen is working on a paper about climate change right now that my friend and colleague Thomas Newberger wrote about in his excellent God's Spies Substack newsletter yesterday, I believe it was. That's well worth the read. And in this, Hansen is proposing that we're going to soon see the collapse of the Gulf Stream, which keeps Europe warm enough it can grow food, and that there will be a 200-foot increase in sea level, and that this could happen in our children or grandchildren's lifetime. I mean, that's going to lead to massive death. Right now, scientists estimate that we're losing about 7,500 Americans every year from climate change-related issues, deaths from tornadoes and droughts and floods and things like that. That number, when that kind of sea level rise happens, that number is going to go up into the millions. So why aren't we holding these people accountable? The World Meteorological Organization, for example, just earlier this week published a report saying that between 1970 and 2021, there were 11,778 extreme weather disasters that caused 2,087,000 deaths and $4.3 trillion in economic losses. And yet we're not recovering this money from the fossil fuel industry, and we're not holding the executives accountable. Is it time for a Nuremberg trial? Is it time to revisit the Nuremberg protocols? Is it time to call for specific reparations? I mean, that is one of the suggestions that Earth One is making. With regard to the reparations, they are pointing out that, for example, Saudi Aramco, if they were to just pay for the damage that they have done, it would be $43 billion a year in reparations for a 25-year period. Now, $43 billion sounds like a lot of money until you figure that just last year, Saudi Aramco showed a $161 billion profit on $604 billion in revenue. So, no, it's not going to send anybody to the poorhouse. It's not going to be a big deal at all. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is using the International Criminal Court at The Hague via the Rome Statute and, charging them with crimes against humanity, going after the fossil fuel executives. But there's another option here, and that is for America to simply buy the three largest fossil fuel companies in the United States. It would cost us about 1/4 of the cost of the Trump tax cuts. Trump tax cuts were about $2 billion. For about $750 million, for about one quarter of the Trump tax cuts, we could buy controlling interest in ExxonMobil, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips. Just go in the marketplace and do it. Pay a premium so that shareholders will, gladly part with their stocks for a profit, and just buy those companies. And then take the profits and use those profits to cover the expenses. These guys have been running on a business model since the 1800s, when the fossil fuel industry really took off in the 1870s, 1880s, really the coal industry in the 1820s. From the beginning, the main business model of the fossil fuel industry has been internalize the profits, keep all the profits, and externalize the losses, whether it's mining tailings or whether it's drilling waste byproducts or whether it's global warming or whether it's 10, 20,000 deaths from cancer every year, hundreds of thousands of cases of asthma and COPD as a result of the particulate matter that is being thrown into the air by burning fossil fuels. All of that, the bill for that is picked up by you and me, via our government, via our taxes. So, let's nationalize these companies. Now, people say, wait a minute, nationalize the companies? That's like Venezuela or Cuba. Well, in World War I, President Woodrow Wilson nationalized the entire nation's radio networks and radio stations. He nationalized the country's railroads. He nationalized the phone company. He nationalized the telegraph operators, AT&T, Bell System, and he nationalized Western Union. President Roosevelt, during World War II, nationalized all of our airplane manufacturers, the gun manufacturers, over 3,300 mines, the nation's railroads, a dozen oil companies, the Hughes Tool Company, the Goodyear Tire Company. He even nationalized Montgomery Ward. When FDR died, Harry Truman continued. He nationalized meatpacking facilities across the country. He nationalized the Monongahela Railroad Company. He nationalized the nation's steel mills. In the 1970s, when the Penn Central Railroad collapsed, Richard Nixon oversaw the nationalization of 20 different railroads and rolled them into one company called Amtrak. In 1974, Nixon, again, nationalized a bunch of railroads into what was called the Consolidated Rail Corporation, Conrail. In 1984, Ronald Reagan, when the Continental Illinois Bank and Trust Company was in a crisis, we nationalized that bank. It wasn't reprivatized until 1991. It was bought by Bank of America in 94. Reagan nationalized the S&Ls in this country, 747 of them. He nationalized over $400 billion worth of nationalization. George W. Bush, after 9/11, he nationalized the nation's airport security system. Just did it instantly, created the Transportation Security Administration. He also partially nationalized the nation's airlines after 9/11. When the crash happened in 2008, Bush nationalized Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We have a long history of this. Bush administration actually nationalized AIG, bought a 36% share in Citigroup, a 73% share in GMAC, forced out the CEO. Barack Obama nationalized the assets of GM. It was 60.8% owned by the federal government. We have done this before, and we could do it again. We could simply buy the fossil fuel industry for literally a quarter of the cost, or maybe a third of the cost of the Trump tax cuts. It's not that much money. When you look at the government budget versus the value of the stock of these companies, we could simply buy them. Why aren't we doing this?